would we do that? Good sir.
Alright, Andy, what are we looking at?
Today we are looking at another new feature of that's coming in 5.7, and this feature is a completely updated version of Composer.
Oh boy, oh boy.
So while I sign in, if you want to remind
give some
people,
context?
yeah, a little reminder of what
I'm good at
Composer
context.
is.
So Composer got added a version or two ago in Concrete5 because we thought there was a need to separate the idea of editing content and creating content. And our experience had shown that in-context editing made a lot of sense for a kind of marketing-heavy website where there is a strong process to create something that looked perfect in the first place, and then you wanted to change it over time. So, you know, handing off a site to a client saying, hey, if you want to add some text or fix a typo, you just put a page in edit mode and you're off to the races. That makes a lot of sense. It makes less sense when you compare it to kind of the blogging experience of I'm really drunk and want to write a passionate treatise about my kitty, and you know, where do I go to do that where it's not going to be published? And you know, you have to make a page underneath a page. You have to go to where you want in the site tree before you can even start making a page, and then you make that page, and you got to remember to hit preview, not publish. And it's easy to want to hit the big blue button instead of the small gray button, and the whole thing just feels scary. And even though I just previewed it, does it show up in the navigations? And technically, you know, all the answers are no, it doesn't, and it works fine, and it's quite solid. But from a process perspective, it can be a little counterintuitive. Also a little frustrating there is no autosave built into that, because I don't know, we would just see people like bust open a page, add a content block, and just start typing, and we're sitting there thinking, oh my god, you know, please say what you're doing.
Leaving it open for hours.
Yeah, coming back hours later, you're like, oh, it's a miracle that works at all. So we built Composer with the idea of, well, this gives you that kind of traditional WordPress blog approach of, you know, I want to go somewhere, add some content to an interface, and you know, it saves as it goes, and I can worry about where I want to publish it and how it should look and when I want to publish it later. I'm just composing. So that was the original idea. Now today it feels a little strapped in, and it kind of serves, I don't know, it kind of like addresses several different problems, probably not spectacularly in any different vein. You've got what I've already described as kind of like blogging as a verb. You've also got this desire to kind of make CRUD interfaces, like, you know, I've got a strong page type that is boats, and you know, on my boats page type, I've got a picture of the boat, I've got the price of the boat, I've got a whole bunch of information that I'm tracking in custom attributes, and I want to make an interface to build those pages out, so I don't have to train someone on in-context editing. And Composer solves that very well today too. You can add those blocks to a Composer template, and you can have this. I mean, almost the way with Ruby you do scaffolding or something. Like, you can make a form, as it were, that auto saves as you goes and gives you more control. But you know, it's not. Again, it kind of solves that, but not as spectacularly as we might like it to.
There are a number of limitations to it, and you are roped into using it in the dashboard. You're sort of roped into the way it wants to display its form fields, that kind of stuff.
So now we're rethinking all of that. Here's your context.
Yes. So for what Franz was saying, this is you know, a blog entry in the sample content of a Concrete5 site, and of course you can go to this page to edit it. But for adding these pages, there's a number of different components. If I put this page in edit mode, there's this thumbnail image, which is what is used to display the thumbnail on the page list that lists these out. There's this header image that has to be sized correctly, and there's this content, and there's also tags, which is, this is a block. But if I actually go to the properties section of this page, that's actually a custom attribute that has to be in there. It has to be in the blog section of the site. There are a lot of requirements for this. So in Composer, in order to do this, and this is similar to how it works today, what we would do is we would set up a new Composer. And right off the bat, if you're familiar with Composer at all, this is going to look a little different, because no longer are these things tied directly to page types. So in Concrete5 today, 5.6 and below, when you want to make something be accessed in Composer, you have to make a page type for it. You have to go to that page type, you have to turn those settings on for that page type, and you only get one Composer per page type. And we've sort of decoupled all of that stuff in Composer 2.0. So if I go to my basic details for blog entry, you can see I've got the name. I can actually have multiple page types here that this could support. And right now, in order to recreate the current blog of concrete5 in the new composer, I have just created blog entry here. And then publish method, I am always publishing it below the blog page, but much like composer of old, you can make it so that these items allow you to publish in different ways. And then if I head back here, another thing that you'll notice is no longer do we handle any of this stuff composer-wise from the actual defaults section. Defaults are still honored, but you'll notice here when I go in to edit my form, I have basically a supercharged form building tool that allows me to group attributes, blocks, and actual core concrete5 properties. So I can add a field set. I can add as many of these as I want. I don't have to add a field set. Well, I have to add at least one field set, but I don't have to give it a name. And I've got basics, attributes, and body. And then if I go down here, I can add different blocks, properties, custom attributes, and the built-in properties are the things in concrete5 that you have to have. So you could actually create a composer with nothing in it, and then it would be functionally useless, but you can do that if you are so inclined. And you could create a composer without access to changing the URL, but giving them the page name. Basically, a lot of the stuff that we hard-coded in the composer interface before is something you can optionally include or exclude as you are so inclined. And down here you'll notice we've added header image, thumbnail tags, all the stuff we had in the old blog. We have custom composer templates just like before. Any particular item in this list of stuff can provide a template if it chooses. And then another big new addition is you can choose optionally if any particular piece of content is required when filling out this composer. So I can make tags required or not required, header image I believe I have required, as well as thumbnail. I can give all of these things custom labels, so no longer are you roped into calling something main content because it appears in the main content area, etc. And then this is what is this guy? This guy is actually a content block that I have named body. And then of course you can do the standard stuff like moving, like reordering these things, and you can reorder the actual attribute sets and things like that. You really have total control over how you present these forms.
Sweet.
And so I have created this blog entry form. Then I can even go out here and click the Output tab, and here I am choosing which blocks appear in which areas on the page types in question. And so this goes through my blog entry page type, figures out what areas it contains, and decides where to dump the blocks into it. And you'll notice there's no attributes or properties in this list because those don't actually show up in the page. Only blocks show up here.
So this would let me do something like make a composer template for boats that gather all this information, but then let people be able to use it on page types that may be mapped to different form factors.
Exactly.
Right? So I could have 2-column and 3-column page types. I could choose when I was making a boat which one I wanted to go, and this interface would tell Composer, hey, for all the data that we're collecting, put it in these block areas for the 2-column and those block areas for the 3-column.
That is exactly right. As you can see here, we've got blog entries, the only tab up here, but if I added more page types to my Composer, I could, if I added a 3-column one like Franz is saying, I could click on that and choose where stuff goes in that template.
Sure.
So you really have total sort of output control. And then of course in permissions here, we have an advanced permission that allows you to choose which users have access to compose using this. Of course, they still have to get into the dashboard to do that. More on that later. But you have control over that stuff as well.
Pretty cool.
So then if I go into my right composer bit, you'll see this honors my setup entirely. Another huge new thing, actually it's very small, but I think people will like this. It just shows the level of polish we're trying to go for here. No longer, if you actually write a composer draft, is it actually create a draft the moment that you, actually I'll discard is a wrong example. If I go back to drafts, I have not created a draft until it's auto-saves for the first time. So I'll delete all my old drafts. If I go back to drafts here, no drafts. So hopefully this will get rid of that problem where you're experimenting with Composer a bunch and you're reloading pages, and then all of a sudden you have like 10 empty drafts and you got to clear all those out. It only makes a draft for you when it autosaves. And of course autosave still works, and all this basic stuff, and all the custom Composer templates still work as well. And you can publish to the page just the same way you normally do.
Pretty nice.
It is pretty nice. And of course, one thing that will show you the kind of sort of level of customization that you can do if you want. If we were, for example, to work on a site where somebody did not want to actually, they wanted to populate the meta title of a page for SEO purposes, but they didn't see the need to have 2 duplicate form fields because they didn't want to have their users have to type in page name and meta title. You could actually remove page name, the core page name property from here, and replace it with meta title up here. And these composers are smart enough to be able to look at the particular attributes you're working with and do special programmatic things with them. And this is stuff that all developers will be able to do as well. This is my sweet page. And then if I were to publish this, I'm going to get some errors because I've marked my attributes as required, which is another nice new feature.
So some basic validation in there.
And if I publish this, I have published my page, and this is my sweet page, and I actually can't read my meta title, of course, from this tiny tab. But if I go into blog, you'll see this is my sweet page is named with my meta title, and if I go into the page source, you'll see that this is my sweet page is actually the meta title attribute. So Composer is smart enough to use meta title as its building block for the actual page name.
You got this layer
up here
to interpret the input and decide what to do with it when you hit publish. So
exactly.
You might even do something like just have a big body field and say, look, the first line from that body field is the page name, the meta title, and the URL.
That is correct, and you could totally do something like that.
Cool.
And just to leave it on that note, on an exciting note, I will show a super simple block that I whipped up this morning, which may or may not totally work. But if I go into block types, I have created a super simple block called Front-End Composer. If I install this block, I can go into my main area, go into Other, click Front-End Composer, and get a list of my composers. And then you'll see that I can actually drop my composer stuff right into the front end of my page.
So Composer forms become things you can share with your audience. You could have add a boat to a group that was semi-public or fully public, and that would make new pages. You could do it in an overlay. You could do it on the page.
You can do it in an overlay.
You could do it on a train. You could do it on a plane.
And it all still honors the same validation. You can see that I don't have the form styles included in my theme to make this really sing yet, but you can see that it's actually, it is posting. It's making sure that this works. I have programmatically disabled autosave in this block, so you can do that through JavaScript API. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do.
I think this will solve a lot of problems. You know, you see people basically talk about different ways to have user-contributed content for years. You know, how do I want to set up a contest where people can upload pictures and have their own page with that thing on there. This is kind of the bones for that.
That's right.
Last thing I wanted to call, because I think
Yes.
it's glazed over. If you go to that little edit icon on the page, now go back just to the general. So I think people will be surprised as to adding a new page. Just go back. Yep. So it used to be that you'd have to go to where you wanted to add the page before you would add a page in concrete5. And that was always very confusing. When you give a demo, you'd show in context editing, it'd be awesome, and then you'd say, now let me show you how to add a page, and you have to go into this whole diatribe about your site being a tree and that kind of thing. Now, you got this little edit icon, it's edit a page, new page, you can see there's drafts right under there. So we're going to build in, I don't know what state you have this in.
Yeah.
But the idea in the big picture is you would be able to add a new page using those composer templates from anywhere, because you don't have to choose where it goes until you actually hit publish. And so this would show some recent drafts. This would give you your composer templates in an overlay or on a new page, and kind of take that step of, you know, having to explain a tree and having to have buttons that have the word sub in them. Pull that out, make this even simpler for people.
That's right. All of the entire composer interface, including validation, all of the blocks, all the attributes, can work and does work in an overlay. So we'll be able to create these pages from anywhere. All the drafts will be available for editing in the overlay from anywhere in the dashboard or from the front end. And it is all being built with that expectation.
Good looking. Nice work, Andy.
Cool.